Welcome to PIPS On Location. We're the new partners in public safety. I'm Inspector Frank Maule of the Wilmington Fire Department. On this show, we'll be taking you a tour of the old fire station on Gilpin Avenue, which now houses the Fire Prevention Unit. We'll be showing you around the station, seeing the museum, and at the end, we'll be talking about its haunted past only a few have encountered. We'd like to welcome to the show today Lieutenant John Porter. Lieutenant Porter is part of our administration staff on the Wilmington Fire Department, but he's also our Fire Department historian. Lieutenant, thank you and welcome to the show. Could you tell the audience a little bit about the fire station, when it was formed, how it became a volunteer department, and then switched over to the career department?
Well, Frank, thanks for having me. Originally, the Woodward Fire Department was formed in 1833, and they went out of existence in around 1890. The Woodward was resurrected again, the name, in 1891, and this station was formed in 1893. The construction of the station was started in June, and the station was occupied in December of 1893. Excuse me. The fire department was volunteer until November 30th, 1921. Then it became a career department. At that time, we had 2 engines and a ladder truck inside the original station, which is out here. This part was actually added around 1910, the part that we're in now.
All right.
So,
all right. Now, when it was a volunteer fire station, they used to have, I believe, a bell tower on the roof. Could you tell the audience what that was used for?
well, the bell tower was used to notify the area firefighters if they had an alarm. They had a system like, say the bell would ring 222 or 224, and that would give the location in the city where the fire was. And they all, at that time, every department in the city would respond to that until around 1898. Then just certain districts would respond to the calls.
Okay, and then after that, that's when they went to telegraphs and they were able to signal the stations within the fire station itself, correct?
Yes, but they still did use bell system. Matter of fact, they eliminated the bell system. They used to do an 8:45 bell. When the kids were going to school, they would know if they were going to be late for school by when the bells would ring. So they eliminated that around 1921. They eliminated the 8:45 bell.
Oh, that's interesting. That's great. Okay. Well, tell you what, why don't we go ahead and take a walk out into the engine bay, and we'll take a look at the hose tower that we have out in the engine bay now.
Okay.
Okay, Lieutenant, we're here inside the hose tower. Could you tell our audience what this was used for?
Well, the hose tower was used, Frank, to dry the cotton hose like we have on the old Mac years ago. When the hose got wet, they would bring the hose in there. There's a rope that would hook to this pulley. They would tie it to the rope. They would pull the hose up and it would hang over and dry. And that would prevent the hose from becoming damaged from mildew or mold. If it was damaged by that, the hose would be no longer serviceable. But with the innovation of the Dacron hose, they no longer had to use the hose tower.
How long would it take for them to dry the hose?
Roughly, I would say it's probably take about 8 hours for it to dry in here, because it's not heated or anything. It's just done by nature. It's natural ventilation to dry it.
All right, and then they would just bring it down and roll it up and put it on a rack and then put new hose up as it goes, right?
Well, as they took the hose off, they replaced the hose on the apparatus to keep the apparatus in service, and then they put the hose in here to dry.
Great. All right. Why don't we go over and take a look at the fire pole now? Now, Lieutenant, we're right here by the fire pole. Could you tell the audience what this was used for back in the day?
Well, basically back in the day, Frank, as we were saying, this was originally a volunteer firehouse. This wall wasn't here. This was all open, so their meetings were held upstairs. All right. So when they had the meetings that they had an alarm, the members would slide the pole to get on the apparatus, or there was a stairwell that would come down. Later on, when the station became a career department, the sleeping quarters was upstairs that the members would use at nighttime to come down. But these were discontinued. This one was around 1987 when the station was remodeled. This was enclosed and everything was brought downstairs for the membership. Plus, what we were saying, that the danger of these things, that we had guys who were injured falling off of these, that their arm would be asleep or they would just lose their grip and they'd fall and they'd get injured.
Oh,
that's why they've been discontinued.
Okay. Now, I know some of the big cities still use the fire poles because the stations are still the way they are from back in the 1900s, especially New York, Chicago. Some of those stations are still in service, so I know some of them probably still do use the poles in the bigger cities, correct?
Yes, because due to the fact, I showed you a picture earlier today where we had a 6-story firehouse downtown, and they had the watchtower up top. At the highest point of the area would be for the watchmen to look for fires, and then they would slide down. As the station was modernized, if you notice, they were all trying to go to one level, doing away with the second floor, doing away with the basement. It's a safety issue. It's a cost savings too.
Right, exactly, yes. All All right, thank you. Why don't we go ahead and we'll check out the engine now, okay? Now, Lieutenant, can you tell the audience about the pumper we have here and the specifics of it back in the day compared to today?
Well, Frank, this is 1954 Class B Mac, 300 gallons of water. It weighs, like I said, 9.5 tons. As you notice the size of the truck with the doors and everything compared to the trucks today, you can see that the fire trucks outgrew the firehouse. If you notice the doors here in the station are very small. This engine, like I said, is 9.5 tons. The new truck is 20-some tons.
We hold more water, too.
Well, we carry more water, more hose. You carry, the trucks are enclosed as compared to the guys used to ride the back steps. But when this truck was made in '54, it was the most modern piece of equipment in America.
Wow.
It's just that the trucks have changed over to a more safer version where we have the enclosed cabs. Can you imagine riding this truck in December?
Oh, December, January, the snow and the rain, the sleet.
Right.
I can't imagine. Those guys back in the day that rode these trucks were tough.
And the guys on the back step, there's nothing to protect. They might have had a hose tarp they could hide under or
Right.
something. Other than that, that was it.
Now, how much water would this truck pump?
As for the pumping capability, I'm not too sure of this truck, Frank, because I'm not familiarized with it.
Okay. Well, compare this truck to today. What do our trucks today pump at?
Well, I think, I think it's a 750 pump, I believe, on this. The trucks now can pump up to 2,000 and some gallons. But it's a two-stage pump, just like today's trucks. You have pressure, volume, and our trucks today have pressure and volume. It's just they have a lot more buttons and gauges than what these trucks have. They're
Right.
very simple.
And the old timers, it was simple for them.
Yes, I mean, hook right off. They had the suction here to hook right to the steamer cap.
Okay.
So this would be like a pump instead of the wagon.
Okay.
You know, so it would pump right to the wagon, which would be your first piece, because it was a two-piece engine company back in the day. So they were designed for that setup.
Great. All right. Why don't we go around the back and we'll go into the watch box.
All right.
Now, Lieutenant, could you explain to the audience what this box is that we're in right now?
Well, this box, Frank, is called the watch box. And going back years ago, in the watch box, you would have a man in here all the time. And he would have a teletype in here, a game well system that would be on a tape that would print out, like say if box 222 came in, it would punch on the tape 222, it would come in.
Oh.
And he would notify the other members in the station that they have an alarm. The bell would go off. Then he'd have a card box. He would open up the card box. He'd go through the card box and see where the exact location of that alarm was. And that's same with the career department. They would have the man in here all the time, 24/7, and they'd have watches. He would be relieved every couple hours. Someone else would come over and take over the watch for him. But until the radio system came, then they did away with the game well system. But the watch boxes are still manned in the station today.
Oh, that's all right. Great. So before 911, how would people? You said there's these things on. What were they on the street? What were they? Boxes on the street corner?
Street corner boxes. We can show you when we go upstairs what they look like. There were different types that they had. And then around 1890-something, they also had a telephone system that were put into some of the firehouses too that they could actually call.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, that's great. All right. Well, why don't we go upstairs and take a look at the museum now?
All right.
As we're going upstairs here, could you stop for a minute and tell the viewers about this little room that we have right here?
Well, Frank, this room here is actually the original hayloft. As you remember, I told you earlier when the wall was at it downstairs behind the pole. When that wall wasn't there, there was a drop-down door that the hay could be dropped down. The area underneath us is actually the stable where the horses were kept.
And that was for the horse-drawn steamers they had back in the day that they used before we had gasoline or
Yes.
diesel-type trucks.
They did away with the horses here around 1910 when they motorized, but they left the station as it was. And then later on, as we said in 87, when they motorized it, the stable actually became the officers' headquarters.
So the guys would come up here and just throw the hay into this loft up here, and then down below there was a trap door, you said, that would drop so they can get the hay out from up here, or would they pull it out from up here?
When we looked at the pictures that I showed you earlier, it showed the door on the bottom. I believe the hay came up through the bottom. This, I think we were looking at this wall was added later on during the expansion.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go upstairs, keep on talking about the museum. Could you tell the audience what this hallway we have here, the pictures of these gentlemen on the wall?
Frank, this is the walk of honor that we have. Since the inception of the fire department, the Wilmington Fire Department on December 22nd, 1775, we've had 20 firefighters who have died in the line of duty. 6 are volunteer and 14 career firefighters. So these are pictures of the career firefighters who have died in the line of duty. And a lot of these guys are family names through the area, 40 acres. As a matter of fact, this house alone had 2 members die in the line of duty.
And our current chief, Chief Anthony Good, his father died in the line of duty back in the 90s.
Yes, his father, which is a line of duty death for the city of Wilmington.
Yes, these are the guys that gave their lives to the city of Wilmington. They came on here and did a career, but they paid the ultimate sacrifice.
They're the ones that gave it all.
Okay, why don't we go down here and we'll talk about the museum. Now, Lieutenant, we're up here in the museum area. Could you explain a couple of the features we have up here in the museum, especially the hose reel we have here and this other little contraption, this tank we have over here?
Frank, these are hand carts. That's a chemical cart, actually what it is, and this is the hose cart. It's believed that these are actually from the volunteer fire companies of Wilmington's history, and that they were given to the Wilmington Finishing Company. That was the rumor, and then we were able to retain them back in around the 70s or late 70s. We were able to get these back. They've been restored. Actually, they had to be dismantled to be brought up here.
Oh, wow, that must have been a task.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so the volunteers, basically, they pulled these to the fire scene then?
Yes.
They didn't hook up to a horse? The men actually pulled them down the street?
Yes, these would be hand carts that were pulled down the street before the innovation of the horses.
Well, imagine pulling a hose cart from here all the way over to 22nd and Tatnall for a fire. That was some exertion.
You have to remember, Frank, that when the city first started off, the highest street was High Street, which is now 4th Street.
Oh, okay.
So the city was very small, and that's why the original Water Witch was down like at 5th and Orange.
I see.
So every company was only a couple blocks apart. As a matter of fact, the Independence is the last company to use a hand cart. They got that from Chester. That when they formed, like in 1904, they were able to get their hand cart. So they're the last company ever to use a hand cart.
Well, I just still can't imagine pulling something like this around, especially if it's like 7, 8 inches of snow out in the street and try to get through the streets during bad weather. It's amazing.
Well, it's not as bad as pulling the hand pumpers around, which would be even bigger and a lot heavier.
That's true. That's true.
Because they were pulled, because as I said, the fire apparatus outgrew the firehouse.
Okay. Now, in the display cases, we have all kinds of memorabilia around here. We have some helmets, trumpets. Now, speaking of the trumpets, we see a lot of them nowadays in parades. The chiefs will be carrying them, and they'll have flowers in them. What were the trumpets mainly used for at the fire?
Well, the trumpet is at the time, is your modern-day radio. That's how you communicated orders. The officer would carry a trumpet, and he would holler out orders out to the men on what to do. So that's been replaced by a radio now. Now, everybody has radios for safety, where back then only one person had the trumpet.
Okay, so he shout out the orders like a megaphone.
Through this trumpet.
Gotcha.
Now, these trumpets in the other cabinet, they're presentation trumpets, or for parades and everything, they're a little bit more ornate than this trumpet that's over in that cabinet.
All right, okay. Now, Lieutenant, since this is the month of October, and we recognize Halloween around this time every year, can we tell our viewers a little bit about some of the ghosts of firefighters past that we've been starting to hear around the station? I know you and myself both have had some experiences in here. Myself, I was down in the engine bay one morning before anybody got in the station here, and I actually heard something or someone walk from the back of the firehouse to the front, and then the front to the back again. And when I came upstairs, I looked around, there was nobody up here in the upstairs. So from that point on, we've had little things happen around the station here where we've come in, lights have been on up here in the museum area, and we've known nobody's been up here overnight. Now, I understand you had a little experience one day when myself and the 2 other inspectors weren't here in the station. Could you tell the audience what happened to you?
Well, I was organizing the pictures that you see downstairs, and you heard something fly across the room and hit the wall downstairs, and I was the only one in the room. So, and I have heard the steps, the people walking across the floor up there too.
Because you were stationed here for quite a few.
Well, for a few years, but
yeah.
just like anything else, it's things that go bump in the night. Who knows?
Now, the weirdest story I've ever heard was coming from a retiree was one of our former fire chiefs. Him and his aide were coming up Gilpin Avenue one day, and the driver at the time, who was the chief's aide, stopped the chief's vehicle in the middle of Gilpin Avenue, looked at the chief and said, "Look in the second floor window and see if you see what I see." And they both looked up, and appeared to be in the window up here on the second floor was a firefighter with an old-time fire helmet on his head. They parked the car because the engine was out. They were out on a run or doing something, and they both came up here, and they found no one up here. So, like I said, hopefully whoever is hanging around here still, it's one of our brothers, and they're still taking care of the place and looking after us while we're around. The only thing I'd like them to do is maybe make a cup of coffee for us, a pot of coffee when we come in first thing in the morning. That would be a typical firefighter right there. So
Asking for too much,
I
Frank.
know. Well, thank you, Lieutenant, for being here on the show this month,
you, Frank,
and we
for having me.
appreciate you for showing us around the station and telling us the history about the Wilmington Fire Department and the Water Witch Fire Station.
Anytime, Frank.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching the show. But before we leave, we'd like to remind the citizens of Wilmington, on Saturday, November 1st, when you change your clocks, please change the batteries in your smoke and CO alarms. Thanks for watching PIPS on Location, and we'll see you next time.